Good morning. Welcome to FAC Live, a first Atlantic show that covers all things e-commerce in the Caribbean. We have guests from different islands across the Caribbean as well as across the pond because we have access to people. They have time, so they're giving it to us. So we're saying, yes, let's learn from these individuals. They've agreed to share insight into the digital world that we all have been forced to grow accustomed to. And if in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and across the islands, we are under lockdown again because we have another wave. So let's sit tight, figuratively and literally, and learn a few things from our guest today. Our guest is David Mullings. He is here to talk about raising capital and entrepreneurship. We may also be touching some DC versus Marvel conversations. You should have heard what we were discussing earlier. It was too funny. He is the chairman and chief executive officer at Mahoe Capital Partners. He has been featured in Bloomberg. He's a Marvel fan and considers Warren Buffett his teacher, although I don't think Warren knows it. But before we talk shop, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn as well as Facebook to get notified when we go live. And last but not least, we're going to welcome in Chris, who is the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce, because he's going to kind of ground us in the world of e-commerce as he has, I think, a little over 20 years of experience. So I think he has some things that we should know about. So good morning, everybody. First, let's start with David. Where are you right now?
Right now, I'm sitting in our office in Miami, in Brickell.
In Miami, Florida, where it is sunny, right?
Very sunny today, thankfully, and actually headed out to play golf this afternoon with a potential investor and an advisor. So I hope that we have no rain.
Put on that sunblock, right? So where is Chris today? Because I know Bermuda had some restrictions. So what is it like where you are?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to say I'm actually back in the office now. So we've had 4, 5, 6 weeks of additional lockdowns and quarantines, and we're in phase 2 now back in Bermuda. So we're back in the office if you choose to be. So I'm very excited to get out of my house and have a bit more of a commute and see people. So yeah, it's a good week so far.
I know how that feels. I went to the supermarket last week and it was joyous yet overwhelming because being inside for so long has this tendency to have this sort of, there's nobody around you, but at the same time, it's kind of exhausting because your body's not accustomed. It's this whole thing we have to figure out. But anyways, let's talk about Mahoe Capital Partners. For those who may not know about the company, can you give us some insight, David, as to what does the organization do?
Well, so it is a Delaware C Corp, a US-based company that's designed to be an investment holding company. Right now, we're private. Our goal is to eventually go public here on a major US exchange. And the idea is to build a new Berkshire Hathaway that primarily invests into the Caribbean. And so we want to look for undervalued companies domiciled in strong long-term growth industries, run by good management with wide moats, and then help to scale them. And we think of it as having 4 units. We think of our listed equities portfolio, public equities, public companies, our non-listed equities portfolio, that's private equity, the private companies. We have philanthropy. We're about to launch our Mahoe Foundation to give back into the region. And then lastly, we have an asset management subsidiary. And that's launching a few funds. Some are focused on the Caribbean, Impact Fund. And then we have a fund actually here in the US that we're rolling out, and we're excited for when that one happens. So that's the goal. We want to help underrepresented groups create wealth.
So there are a lot of words there that I did not understand. And we hope to, by the end of this session, kind of iron out a lot of things because we are in a time of transformation at the risk of sounding trendy, where we are trying to figure out how to balance business online. And with that, there's an influx of interest in the e-commerce space. And when you are trying to, stay afloat or do more than staying afloat, you tend to make bad decisions. So we want to make sure and guide our audience today as to what that looks like from a landscape from e-commerce. So, Chris, when we look at setting up your e-commerce, what is the first expense that every business should say, okay, top of the line, this is what we need to look at?
It's a good question, and there's a few things that I'd say we would look in parallel. So, the first would be probably your website, and really decide. And I know that sounds obvious, but I think in the age of social media, where there's Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of it, there's still a need and still a requirement to have a website. Facebook and Instagram are great methods of doing sort of quick content to grab somebody's attention, but they're not very searchable. So if you go into Google and you're looking for this product near me, you really need a good website. You need a clean, professional website that's easy to navigate, that can get the people the information they need very quickly. So I would say that's definitely one of the first places that you would need to spend money, and do your research. So make sure that you are using a template that is connected to a gateway, that a payment gateway like FAC that's connected within the Caribbean, so you can get your payments. So a lot of people make that mistake, and we've talked about that a lot before, where they'll buy a website template that's only connected to a US payment gateway, so their money can only settle to the US. So that's obviously a huge mistake to make in the first stretch. And then you're really looking through the different relationships you need to make that website work in terms of payments. And so that would be your bank partner, what we call an e-commerce acquiring bank, within your country. So that's basically a bank that will accept all the payments from online. And there's a process to go through there to be able to set up with the bank. There probably won't be any initial setup charges there. Potentially a small setup fee to activate the gateway or activate the bank account itself. And then really the big expenses are going to come in terms of your inventory. Depending on what type of business you are. So if you're a services business, your costs initially are going to be around the people that are going to deploy those services for whoever's buying them. But if you're a physical goods company, where are you sourcing your goods from? What sort of credit arrangement will you have with that company? How are you going to sort of import those goods if you have to? Then how are you going to ship those goods directly to the individual? So all those play a really important part in the sort of the initial spend when you're setting up your e-commerce business.
Okay, so let's take a step back, because e-commerce is something that it's just, I can't even say it's mind-boggling to say it out loud. It's still new to many businesses in the Caribbean. But at the same time, I understand that it could be difficult, because as far as the financial world sees the tech industry, because that's what it's considered, there's no tangible investment, right? So when you go to your financial company to say, okay, this is what I want to do, and I am speaking from experience, you tend to have this, well, where's your assets? Where are the things that we can repossess, right? So when it comes to having this conversation about investment, David, I want you to share your perspective from somebody who, being from Jamaica and then having the experience in North America. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur in that space?
Well, I used to work for a financial institution in Jamaica, and I helped to design mortgages, investment products, savings products. And what I tell every entrepreneur is that banks lend you money when you don't need it, right? You have assets that they can then lend against, which means you have something. Whether it's a house, a car, you have something. So that's not who you go to for starting your business. You could look for a small business loan maybe, but in general, again, they do want assets to then lend against. So their whole goal is to minimize risk. And think about it this way: they're lending your money. It's not the bank's money. They take my money as savings to then lend it out and generate money from it. They don't want to lose that money. So they don't actually want to take risk. So that's not where you go. You need to identify, there's actually 3 F's I learned here in the US: friends, family, and fools. Those are the first 3 people to invest at the start of the business, not when it's generating money, but the first 3 that start. So in most cases, you need to save your own money. in the Caribbean, I don't you want to take out and use a credit card. We have 0% cards here in the US, 1 year usually. You can put it on the card and then repay it. I wouldn't recommend that in the Caribbean. But it typically is your money and then your family's money, some friends' money. You can pool them together, get them to be essentially angel investors. And it might not be that they own a piece of the business. You might treat it as a loan. Lend me some money to buy some product or to launch a website and buy the product to then start selling. But once you start getting traction, that's the important part. You have an MVP, a minimum viable product. So your e-commerce site is up. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be pretty, but it's up. Your first other products are in there. You get people to start buying. Now you're generating traction. That means you need to know your numbers. You need to be able to present what are my sales on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis and show some growth. The thing that I think most people overlook, though, is that e-commerce allows you to pre-sell things. So, for example, I might come up with a t-shirt design or 5 t-shirt designs. Instead of spending the money to produce them now, and I don't know how many small, medium, large I need, I could actually put them on the website and tell people, hey, pre-order the shirts. And then they'll be available on X date. So 30 days from now, I will then ship them. And get people to pre-order. Now I know what demand is going to look like. I get capital from them to now go and use the capital to produce it. I think that's actually the best way to do a physical goods e-commerce business is design, put it up, get pre-orders first, and then use that cash to then finance the business as it grows. And then you go to the investor.
The idea of going to any of my family members for money just seems very overwhelming, but I'm going to take note because I feel like that those types of questions come with a long barrage of, blah, 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 blah.
Well, don't take the money from those. If they have a ton of questions and they're there to support you, then don't take it from them. If it's an uncle who says, boy, I'll lend you money 10 years ago, you never pay back, you don't want that capital from them. You need capital that truly believes in you. They're willing to lose it and say, I want to support what you are doing. So here is some capital. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, at least we tried. And I know you put your best foot forward with this business. It wasn't some fancy flight idea that you ran off to go and do. You didn't steal the money. You actually did what you said you were going to do. It just didn't work out. Be careful about who you take money from at the earliest stages.
I feel like that's all my family members, but I will still take note. Anyway, so hi Simon, we'll answer your question, but yes, it's with WebGoal. There's a WooCommerce plugin with the FAC solution. So on the cusp of the conversation of asking your family for money, or even any business, asking anybody, Chris, do you can you give that entrepreneur sort of a call sheet? A list of, these are the expenses, because the website is one.
Yeah.
When it comes to card fees and banking fees, I find a lot of entrepreneurs are disconnected with the additional fees that come with their online business, because we're still having people not understanding cybersecurity. When your password is 54321, we have a problem. So what does that list looks like when they're having that conversation asking for money?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I don't remember last time I was in Trinidad and I was giving a presentation at the Chamber of Commerce, and one of the comments, the questions that they asked was that the fees are so expensive that it put my friend's company out of business. And so my immediate thought to that is, okay, well, the pricing's wrong, obviously, then in terms of whatever they're selling, because they haven't worked out their cost of goods sold, right? So, but there are fees, and it's second nature to me. But until I came into this business, not quite 20 years ago, 17, but not quite that old yet. But
sorry.
But the industry is incredibly complex on the back end, and you don't, if you're not involved in it, you won't know. And but I always want to use this as an example to tell people that, because it's then creating the value and the fees that you're being charged. So you understand the value of why you're being charged those fees, rather than, the banks are just trying to steal all my money. So, there are gateway fees. So like companies like mine, First Line of Commerce, we charge basically a per transaction fee, and then usually some sort of monthly fee within there. And then the banks are going to charge you what they call a merchant discount rate, which is a percentage on each transaction that settles to your account. So they will usually net that out before the money hits your bank account. And that's the same as if you have a point of sale machine in your brick and mortar business, which you swipe a card or dip a card, each transaction, the bank is going to take a percentage of that. So those are the two main fees: the payment gateway fees and the bank, what's called MDR, or merchant discount rate. But what's also important to point out is, not the bank, even though that percentage is going to be, somewhere between 2 and 5%, that's not net fees to them, right? So, Visa and MasterCard are going to charge the bank a percentage of that as well. So it's not, again, just want to get past that perception, it's just all bank fees. It's, they're providing elements of the service, but there's also other providers within the service as well, like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, that are charging the banks before they charge you. So it's, and the networks, the amount of security that goes into these networks is massive. So, we go through a massive audit, technical audit every year. It takes about 3 months to get through. It's very expensive. Banks have to do the same thing. The security around the networks, between all the different connections between the gateway and the bank and what's called a processor and Visa, MasterCard, are all very, very secure networks, and very fast networks. So those transactions are happening in milliseconds and covering huge geographies to get you that approval on that website and then settle that money to your bank account. So, but the long-winded way of saying, those are the two major fees in the transaction. So a payment gateway fee and the bank merchant discount rate. And then you're going to be looking at other fees in terms of, if you're using a website template, there's usually some sort of monthly fee that goes with that. If you're building your own from scratch, you're going to be paying a website developer to build that for you. So there are definitely, those are ones to look out for, and those are the sort of recurring fees that you need to build into your overall cost of the goods that you're selling, and then figure out, what's your profit margin on top of that to be able to actually bring you into profit as a business.
Great. So for those who didn't catch all of that, you can actually head over to firstatlanticcommerce.com. In the blog, we do cover a lot of these conversations and give you how to, especially across the Caribbean, because different banks have different fees and how you set up the account as well. So you're going to quick break, but before we do, I want to prep David for the next question, and it's about where do we go? How do we start as a business if we want to say, okay, we're shifting our business to the online world, or we're investing in software? We want to check out what Mahoe has for us, right? So how do we start this conversation? What information do we have to bring with him even before we set up an appointment? So we'll be right back. Welcome back to FAC Live. We're here talking about money because it's how the world goes around. More specifically, entrepreneurship. Shout out to Mark, Simon, and Janice. Any comments? Janice is LOLing at something we said. So the content is important. And if you have any questions, make sure to slide in the comments because we have David's attention. So let's try and squeeze as much information out of him as possible. All right. So for David, we are ready to ask you for money. What are you looking for? How is this conversation going to be impactful for you?
Well, so Not just asking us for money, right? We are not venture capitalists. And so the first thing when you decide you want to know, raise money from outsiders, from professional investors, whether angel investors, VCs, we are more on the private equity side, growth capital. You need to research, first of all, what do they invest in? What stage companies do they invest in? That's number one. Number two, what industries do they invest in? Number three, what geographies they invest in. You don't want to just go and talk to everybody. If they don't invest in the Caribbean, then you're wasting their time. If they don't invest in early stage startups, you're wasting their time, which means you're wasting your time. If you're asking for a check that's too small for what they're looking for, then you're wasting their time and you're wasting your time. And then it proves that you didn't do enough research, which is a red flag to any investor related to the entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs need to be willing to do more work. You need to do research and come prepared. The other thing that you have to do, if you realize, okay, this person does invest at my stage, they invest in my geography and they can write the size check that I look for, now I want to reach out to them. You need to have an executive summary. So usually that's 1 to 2 pages. It gives an overview of the business. We need to know who is the management behind this company, some background related to you. If you are a new entrepreneur, you better have a good board of advisors. Some people have actually been there, done it before. Don't think that you know how to do this by yourself, and don't just fly by the seat of your pants. So those are 2 things: executive summary, management background, or advisory board. And then you need to know your numbers. We don't need 5-year projections. I'll be honest, the projections always either going to overperform or underperform. Everybody comes up with the rosiest projections in most cases, and then they present them to you and say, "Is my worst case?" No, we know it's not your worst case. So have some idea of the next 18 months. How much money you need to cover the next 18 months, what revenue is going to look like over the next 18 months, and a clear use of funds breakdown. How am I going to use the money that I've asked you for to scale this business over the next 18 months? That's the most important thing, how you're going to use the money. And that includes who you're going to hire. We do not expect you to stay head cook and bottle washer. We love doing this in the Caribbean where we're trying to cheap out the thing. We don't want to hire people. We want to do everything ourselves. No, you need to spend money on good legal firms. You need to spend money on marketing. That's just a given. So hire quality people and be prepared to do that. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, you especially need to hire people with more experience than you and be willing to bring them on, be willing to listen to them. You might not be able to pay full market price, but that's why you give up some equity. When Facebook launched, he then gives up some equity. Amazon, he gives up equity. And that's normal for you to give up a little bit of equity to your earliest team and they take a lower salary. In our case, because we're more in the private equity world, we have a 66-point due diligence document that we send out, and then you create what's called a data room. So a company like us would want to see the actual legal registration of the business. Where is it registered? What's the documentation? Whether it's articles of incorporation or what shareholder rights we're going to have. So we want to see that. We want to see a number. We want to know if you've ever been sued, how did you resolve it? Is there anything else still out there or not? We want to know if we're going to get any board seat or an advisory board seat. Board seats have legal ramifications, advisory boards don't. So we need to know, are you going to have D&O insurance, directors and officers insurance? A lot of people ask me to join their board, and I say, great, if you want me on the board, it opens up my own assets to being sued. So you need to have D&O insurance to prevent me personally from getting sued because you made a mistake with your business. Are you willing to pay for that? Well, most people don't even know what that is. So again, that's another red flag. So spend some time understanding what they're going to look for. In our case, we're looking for profitable existing businesses, domiciled in strong long-term growth industries with good management in place. So that means that your business needs to already be profitable, not just generating revenue. But that's what we're doing. That's a Warren Buffett approach to investing. VCs, early stage investors don't mind that. They will invest before you're profitable. Some of them will even invest pre-revenue. Well, look for those companies if you don't have revenue as yet. But those would be the things that would matter to me. I think it's the most important thing. Go and read some books, read some articles about how to raise money. You could actually Google how to raise money, Y Combinator. And you're going to see some 2 amazing articles that are going to teach you what you need to have in place. And then I recommend a book. Actually, I have it here. It's called The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. That's a great book about how to pitch, how to prepare, how to scale. And then the last book that I recommend for everyone, regardless of raising money, is called Profit First. And I think that's a great way for you to design your business around profitability as soon as possible.
Thanks for that, David. I really felt like you were calling me out on trying to do everything.
Yep.
Because it's something I advise clients to when we talk about personal branding, right? When you look at people LinkedIn profile, they're everything and anything and nothing at the same time. It's quite interesting to see this long-winded, I'm doing all these things, but are you actually focusing on something that's going to be profitable in the end?
We say jack of all trades, master of none, but think about it this way. I played sports, right? I played football in Jamaica for real money in the 2nd and 3rd division. I played as a striker. I didn't go on there to play defender, goalkeeper, midfield, and striker and coach a team. I went on and became really good at one thing. I need to score goals. That's my job. And if you go and put me in the goal, I'm probably not going to be a goalkeeper. I'm definitely not going to be a good defender. I know that for a fact. It's the same way in business. You need to decide, what are you going to become top of mind for? And Amazon started off being top of mind for books. That's what they wanted to do. If you're going to become a doctor, you take to be a specialized. You're going to be a lawyer, you specialize. The same way in the business, you need to specialize in something within your business. So if you are going to be the CEO because you're more outspoken, you're more extroverted, you might be a little charismatic, you don't get, not afraid of talking in front of people, great, you're the CEO. If you're better at operations, then you're probably going to be the chief operating officer and have somebody else take the CEO role. If you're the one that's good with numbers and good at finance, then you're the CFO, you're the chief financial officer. Right? If you're good at marketing, then you're the CMO, take on the marketing. There's nothing wrong with splitting duties. And in fact, you should split duties. The quicker you have help, is the faster your business is actually going to grow, and it's the more that investors will take it seriously. Now they know it's not a lifestyle business. You're not just doing it for yourself. It's a group of people actually building a company. And that's how you go from being a hustler to an entrepreneur to a business owner, is that you add team members and start delegating tasks. And that allows you to work on the business instead of in the business.
So from your experience, is there sort of a red flag when you have a team of contractors versus employees?
No, that's not a red flag at all. In our case right now, I'm the only employee for Blue Mahoe Capital. It's 9 of us, 8 contractors, independent contractors, 1 employee at this point in time. And that's not an issue, as long as we know that you intend to actually eventually hire them. Right? There's nothing wrong with separating two. Employees cost a lot more money to actually hire. And if you don't have enough money in place, you shouldn't take on that. And then, as you know, employees have contracts and then you have to fire them. Independent contractors have contracts, but it gives you more leeway as a startup. So I think it's good to actually start with contractors and then intending those to have them learn the business, work with you, and then scale, eventually becoming full-time employees or part-time employees. Everybody doesn't have to be full-time necessarily. But that's not a red flag.
That is so good to hear. Make a note for myself. So, Chris, I want you to give our audience the top 5 contractors that you should hire when you are running your e-commerce website.
Yeah, and we run a mix of full-time and contractors too. But we're a 22-year-old business, and I think some of that is for us is skill sets. Bermuda is a very small place. There's less than 60,000 people here, and sometimes you just can't find the people you need. And bringing people here is also very expensive. Bermuda is the most expensive place to live in the world, literally. So it's and then there's that balance, like David said. Once you bring somebody on as a full-time employee, there are a lot more responsibilities that you have to that individual. So you need to think that through in terms of how you want to build out your model. So from contracting point of view, it really it's hard to give a generic answer there because it really depends on the type of business you are. For us, for example, as a software company, all our contracting hires are really around the software development side. They're very unique skills, especially within the payment space, that we we even pre-COVID, we were comfortable with having those people in a remote location, based on the type of work that they're doing. A lot of developers like to be on their own. They want to sit in a room with 1,000 screens and code away and not talk to people, and that's fine. And that's just the nature of the business. But we tend to have, so in Bermuda, for example, like our executive team is here. They're all here. Our business development team is here, although we'll travel a lot because we cover 32 different countries. So they tend to be full-time positions. I think when it comes to finance, there's definitely an opportunity to outsource some of that in terms of contracting. It depends on the type of, maybe not your CFO, but people that are just the day-to-day accounting. You might be able to find a good firm that can help you contract with that as well. So, but it really will depend on the business. Software developers, website developers, anybody that is more technical in terms of what they do can generally be in a sort of contract type scenario, for sure. And then just to add to what David is saying there as well in terms of source of funding. So what we're seeing a lot of in the Caribbean right now are incubators. So companies that will, take somebody that just has a great idea, but no idea what to do next, and will, you have to sort of apply for the programs, but then they will help you with your business plan, with your funding potentially through contacts they have, with working out your overall business model, with your marketing, with your sales. Will put you through a program that will put you in a much better position to be able to start and then eventually go and raise funding as well. So I know the guys at Tech Beach do a really good job. They just recently launched a new incubator for the Caribbean. If you get in touch with your local chamber of commerce, they will generally know where the new incubators and when the new programs start. And then there are different sort of government, private sector sort of quangos that are coming about that are there to help micro and SME businesses. So I think there are a lot of opportunities there now, and you have to do the hard work yourself as well to be able to go out and find it and not just expect it to come to you.
Great advice. So we're going to ask David after the break. We want to find out, when should you have that investor conversation, because there's a balance between Googling Y Combinator and not necessarily live in a society that understands technology, but then also, where does that conversation start and end with, okay, I have this idea, it can make money, versus I'm on the brink of making money. So yeah, that's a lot. And we're going to dissect that on our right after the break.
That's right.
Welcome back to FAC Live, where we talk about all things e-commerce. More specifically, today we're talking about raising capital in the Caribbean. We're here with David Mullings. He is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at Blue Mahoe Capital Partners. And we want to find out from him, when do we have this investor conversation? Because I don't know about, for those who are watching this, if you're an entrepreneur and you have this burning desire to do this thing and you see the impact and you just want to get it done, your head usually is in that specific problem and trying to solve it. But then you have a world around you that doesn't necessarily reflect your idea. and the thing is, when a tree falls and nobody's around, did it actually happen, right? So I want to ask David, based on his understanding in the world of money, when do you start having that conversation?
So it's two different conversations they have. One, you have a conversation with one of your advisors. So you have an advisory board member who has raised money in the past, and you want to talk to them to get the proper things in place. The last thing you want to do is reach out to someone on LinkedIn and say, I have this idea, here's how it's going, I'm looking to raise $100,000 US, for example. The person is going to say, great, send me a pitch deck. and send me executive summary so I can take a look. Well, if you don't have a pitch deck and don't have an executive summary, guess what? You are now a red flag. It means you weren't serious, you weren't ready. So don't approach an investor until you're ready. That's number one. Number two, never approach the investor you actually want to raise money from first. Don't approach them first. Approach someone else first to invest, get questions, get feedback, update the pitch deck, and eventually go after the person you really want. It's not going to be a best pitch deck in the first one. So don't send out that one to who you really want to get the money from. And that's the second one I'd warn people around. I think it's important to understand that you get one shot. You have to have your numbers in place. You have to ensure that you look like you intend to be successful. You need to sound like you actually know what you're doing on the business side. And don't be afraid to admit that, oh, it's my first time, and so I need some guidance. Here's what I expect from you if you make an investment. Because in most cases, early stage investors aren't looking to just simply, put over some money and then sit back. They actually want to pay it forward. They want to help. They want you, the entrepreneur, to avoid making the mistakes that they made. Right? They see it as a way to kind of live vicariously through you in most cases. But they also have probably 5 investments they're doing per year over the next 3 years. Typically, angel investor wants to build a portfolio of 15 companies at minimum. So you need to be careful thinking that you're going to now all of a sudden have a free employee who you can send them everything to now go and help you with. That's not the way it's going to work. So set some boundaries and have realistic expectations. But again, I think personally in the Caribbean, you should be going to the incubator programs and the accelerator programs first. So whether this is Branson Center or 10 Habitat, I've worked with both of them. I think those are great opportunities for you to get in and beef up yourself. You need to go through business model canvas, for example, with these guys. If you don't know what BMC is, you're probably not going to raise some money. You need to know these things. People will say that basically you need to know how investors think and then deal with their questions and answer the questions that they want. You need to understand the language you're going to use. So for an e-commerce business, for example, I would ask you, and any sensible investor is going to ask you, what's your CAC? And if you look at them critically, they're going to be like, okay, well, you're not ready. You're just not ready. It's your customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost for you to acquire a customer to come and actually pay on your business, pay for the service or pay for the product? Yes, we can think that it's acronyms and it makes it harder to raise money, but look at it this way. You have to take an exam to become a doctor. You have to take an exam to become an accountant. You have to take an exam to become a lawyer. And they're hard. We in the Caribbean take CXC. They're hard for a reason. They're designed to separate out people so we can know who is actually committed, who is passionate versus who is just doing it because mom said do it or because it's the latest hype or because I just want to get rich. You need to be passionate about solving an actual problem that people are going to pay for. Right? It's not just that you want to solve the problem. People have to be willing to pay for the solution that you provide. And so if you're only doing it for money, I'm sorry, you're going to take forever. It's going to take you probably 10 years or more. It's not an overnight success. And that means you need to be passionate about getting it done. And we can tell when you're passionate about solving that problem. We can tell when you're passionate about a business. It comes out in your presentation. It comes out when you talk about it randomly at dinner. The last thing is, if you do want to get introductions for money, then you need to get introductions, which means you need to build your social capital. So many entrepreneurs focus on financial capital and completely ignore social capital. That's actually more important. In most cases, you get introduced to an investor. You don't just blindly send us a message via email or send us a DM on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn. You get introduced. So somebody's on the advisory board, they get introduced. So that means show up at events where we are going to be. Come and meet us. Talk to someone who knows us. Look at your LinkedIn profile and see who is connected and ask for an introduction. And that gives you a much higher chance of success.
So for those who just joining us, we're here with David, and before we started the live, he started to rattle off some acronyms, and I'm like, I'm so happy that you think I'm this smart. So when he just mentioned the CAC, I love the fact that he explained what it is, and I am going to maybe tattoo this on my hand because it's so important in the marketing world as well, which is the customer acquisition costs. And a lot of people don't understand that, those are sort of the the idea of a user journey in the marketing space. And it's even more important in e-commerce because it's trackable. Your entire customer journey is trackable. And if you don't know that and what to do with the data, like, then e-commerce is not for you.
I have three aspects for you that are going to be important when you stand in front of a sophisticated investor, a serious investor. And so this is TAM, SAM, and SOM. So TAM is TAM, total addressable market. They're going to ask you, what's the total addressable market for the problem you're trying to solve? But nobody expects you to get all of that market. What they're going to ask for next is serviceable. I can't remember what A stands for. Addressable market, serviceable addressable market. So you are getting a piece. So you could say, okay, you know what? Operating systems overall is this size. Call it $1 billion. Well, the addressable market, I'm only focusing on the Windows-based operating system. So that's an addressable market. But I'm not going to get all of Windows either. You're not getting 100%. So some is serviceable, obtainable market. You will never get 100% of the market. Are you going to get 50% of the market? Are you going to get 20% of the market? I can now get a number from that. If you tell me it's 100,000 users total, and it's going to cost you $2 US per person for your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, your numbers better add up when you tell me that $100,000, spend $50,000 on marketing, how many customers are you going to get? 50,000 divided by 2 is 25,000 customers. But if the total market is 100,000, it means you're going to have 25% market share. That's your serviceable, obtainable market. So investors are going to ask to see that slide. And what TAM, total addressable market, how big is this market? We don't like tiny markets. It's the same risk. We need bigger markets. What's your serviceable addressable market? And then what's your obtainable market? How much you think you can actually get in market share?
Wow, that is a masterclass worth in gold. This time well spent, right? That's so good to know for those out there joining us. And go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I was just saying that's so relevant for the Caribbean because the market size is small, right? So you have to really try and figure out, if your cost of doing business is very high and there's only a handful of customers to go after, what is the point, really? You got to really figure out, I love this idea, I'm passionate about it, but is it going to make any money? And that's really, really important. I know when we, just to give example from an FAC perspective, we had customers in lots of different parts of the world. And 8 years ago, we decided to focus solely on the Caribbean and Central America. But we knew from our research that we had to get a big chunk of the market to make it work. We're a smaller company. We're not a massive like authorized.net, so we don't have the expenses that a company like that would have. But even still, because of the size of the market, we knew we had to be really aggressive and get a big percentage of that market to make it work for us. So it's really important to look at that.
Great. Tyrell had a question around firms being focused on the Caribbean and who are interested in investing in the Caribbean, especially towards tech startup. And I know you'd have mentioned earlier Tech Beach, and David, I think you had two other individuals as well, two other companies.
Yeah, well, Tech Beach is not a fund, so he wants to talk about early stage investing funds. So there's only one I know of in Jamaica, Graph Ventures, run by Dimitri Dawkins. In general, the Caribbean is attached to Latin America and the Caribbean, the LAC region. So when you decide to go to a firm, you need to be thinking of the fact that you are counted as part of Latin America. So yes, SoftBank has a $100 million fund based here in Miami, actually down the road from me, that invests in Latin America and the Caribbean. They tend to overlook the Caribbean. So you need to be able to convince them that your solution, especially if it's tech, there's no reason that it should only be focused on the English-speaking Caribbean or the Dutch-speaking Caribbean or Spanish-speaking Caribbean. We have the same problems in all emerging markets. So your business better be to show them how it can expand into Colombia, into Brazil, Chile, and then even Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa. And think about it from this standpoint. It costs the same amount of money to pay a programmer to build software for 10,000 people, a market of 10,000, or a market of 60,000, or a market of 1 million. Like you have to pay this person the same salary pretty much. So you want it to be spread across as many potential users as possible. So you need to be getting into multiple markets within 18 months. You can't stay in just Jamaica or just Trinidad or even one city. Think about it. Jamaica has 2.7 million people, and that's the largest English-speaking population in the Caribbean, the third largest English-speaking population in the Western Hemisphere. But there are two cities in Colombia that have a larger population than Jamaica. Two cities, just cities, have a larger population than Jamaica, and Jamaica is the largest English-speaking population in the Caribbean. We need to be thinking way bigger to get any investors to actually say, the Caribbean, this makes sense to look at a startup. There's a reason why we haven't had a Facebook in the Caribbean, or an Amazon, or a Google, or a Microsoft. It's not because we don't have the money. The capital is there. Nobody has tried to launch something that big. We keep focusing on doing Caribbean things, or Trinidad things, or Jamaica things. We're not trying to solve global problems using the Caribbean as our R&D hub. Test it in the region where we have easier access to regulators, we have easier access to feedback, and then scale it really quickly into the rest of the world, right? Uber is global, but it was a Jamaican company. It was Jamaica. Uber just coming to Jamaica. Uber is a US company, but they're global. They didn't stay just there, right? DoorDash, all these companies have done their best to expand as quickly as possible and be global. We need to be thinking of the Caribbean region as leveraging technology, leveraging internet, to be instantly international.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And we get this PayPal conversation comes up all the time within the Caribbean. So why can't we have PayPal? And that's a whole other session altogether. But so then we get the questions. Go, why don't you build PayPal for the Caribbean? I said, well, quite simply, the numbers don't work. It just simply would not scale out and make anybody any money. So, as much as as much as we are vested in the region, we need, if we're doing something like that, we need another part as well. So, we have Caribbean, we have Central America, and that is a lot of merchants, a lot of volumes when you combine the two of them, and that's what makes sense to us. We lost Pauline.
Oh, well, then let's bounce questions off each.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, do you think there are enough incubators in the Caribbean?
So my answer would be no. I don't think there are enough incubators in the Caribbean. I think too many people wanted to jump to accelerators, which is what I think of Y Combinators. So first of all, we tried to copy Silicon Valley. Too much of us in the Caribbean have tried to copy Silicon Valley. In fact, Silicon Valley, that model doesn't work in most US cities. So why are we trying to copy something into an ecosystem that doesn't even have the same level of research universities and technology support and venture capital support? It's just not the same. So we need to come up with our own modified version of that. And yes, we need far more incubators. In fact, we should be doing that from high school. We should be helping people to better understand business. We should be having classes around financial literacy. This is a good thing. But most importantly, I think you agree with me on this one, Chris, is that in the Caribbean, we have traditionally pushed people to not get into business, to not be entrepreneurs. We've been stuck on the doctor, lawyer, engineer, go get a 9-to-5, and that's what you need to do. And parents have been pushing their kids to that. We don't push our children to get into the arts and become an entrepreneur from that standpoint, or to get into business. And in fact, there was a time where the kids who went into business were the ones who were looked down on as the B students and the C students. That mentality has to change.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And, I think actually, now what you're seeing, especially within the fintech space and, cryptocurrencies and all the rest of it, that actually is more attractive to a younger generation now, right? And you're seeing a lot of the talent that might have gone into, accounting or engineering, traditional engineering, going into the tech space. And yeah, and it's great because, especially the crypto space is complicated. I'm in payments for a long time,
right?
And even when that first came out, there was a lot of reading of articles, a lot of watching of YouTube videos to get to a point where it actually makes sense. And that's to me being in the payment space, let alone somebody that's just going, what's a blockchain? What do I do with Bitcoin? What's a Dogecoin? There's just so many aspects to it, and it's so volatile. So it's really. It's going to take a little while. I think the best explanation I saw over the other day was that it's like cryptocurrency is kind of like when AOL came out, originally. It's like everybody's interested. It's, nobody's quite sure the use cases properly yet.
Right.
What's going to be spawned off the back of it, but it's a massive industry. What do you think about crypto in terms of general investment?
I was hoping you were going to ask me about crypto. I'm not a supporter of crypto. I support digital currencies, but for the same reason I don't buy gold, I don't buy cryptocurrency. That's speculator and not investor. So if I was to put money into crypto, it would literally be the money that I'd use to buy a lottery ticket. It's no different. It's the money I can afford to lose. If it goes up, great. If it doesn't go up, not a big deal. I don't see them as payment options. They could be stores of value, but crypto depends on the greater fool theory. And if you bought stock counting on somebody paying more for it later, just hoping they pay more versus actual fundamental analysis, the company generates revenue, here's market share, here's the team, then you're speculating. It's the same way. So for me, though, I have a personal issue with crypto, and it's the fact that I grew up in a country that was ravaged by money laundering and drug money. Cryptocurrency makes that easier. So I just can't support the idea of money that can be traced and allows people to make it easier to, for example, let's go and shut down a pipeline here in the United States that delivers 45% of all the gas on the East Coast. We're going to use hacking to do that. And then we're going to demand that you pay a ransom. Of course, a ransom is in cryptocurrency because it's not traceable. Well, I have a fundamental issue with that because drug money has made it easier for corruption. It has seen the devastation of the entire economy over 35 years. So I don't like the anonymity of crypto. I like digital currencies, though, and no question, digital currencies are the future. Paper is literally like that's so 90s, right? We can't walk around with all this paper. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I've not been a paper person for a long time. And if a store doesn't accept cards, for example, I just personally won't go there.
And it's safer. It's safer for us to actually use digital currencies to make a payment at the store. So it reduces fraud. I don't have to worry about somebody skimming my card. I much prefer to make a payment using whether it's Apple Pay or Google Pay, Android Pay, or, as I said, the card with a chip in the card. I don't want to swipe the Stripe anymore.
Excellent. So we're going to snippet that bit of your conversation and we're going to play that on repeat for all our customers going forward. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm surprised. The Caribbean is so heavily dependent on tourism, which means we have people flying in from Canada, the UK, the US, who expect to be able to use chip cards. They expect to use Apple Pay. They expect to use Android Pay. How are merchants required to be convinced? They don't have customers just saying, "Oh, I want to buy this. I'd buy this tattoo from you. I'd buy this scarf or this cap, this T-shirt, but I want to be able to pay using my wallet, my phone."
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's the other side of our company, our Power Trans company, that is fully invested in making that available through the Caribbean right now. You don't realize how much you potentially lose when you don't offer all the methods that people want to use to pay effectively.
No, I love that. So that's important to me. So in your case, if I was going to set up, or if we invested in a company, for example, in Trinidad or Barbados, Jamaica, who had no e-commerce presence, because we are probably 10 years behind the US in terms of e-commerce. And e-commerce is still less than 20% of all commerce in the US. It's not as big as we tend to think, even though we keep hearing about Amazon. They would come through you to be able to do the payment gateway to be able to accept money. They wouldn't need to go and open an account in the US with Stripe or PayPal.
Not in the US.
Right.
No, not in the US. So they would come to us and the bank and their local bank. But we connect to all the banks in the Caribbean. So whether that's RBC, NCB, Republic Bank, First Citizens, all the Canadian banks. So from that perspective, we're that gateway, literally, to all the different banks within the Caribbean. So we can connect you to all of them. And I'm glad you mentioned Stripe, actually, because if we're spending this time investing in a local infrastructure and local companies, and then outsourcing the payments piece to a US company, that just doesn't, then you've got money flowing out, and then you're losing money bringing it back in. It just, it's sort of counterintuitive to growing the local e-commerce economy, not just from investment, but from payments, from banking, local suppliers. The mission is to grow local. not just outsource it out to the US.
No, that makes sense. And once it goes through the US, there creates this nexus as well. Where once money touches US shores, it opens you up to a lot more legal risk, as we all know. So yes. I'm glad that you're working on that. So in my question to you, since we're talking about raising capital in the Caribbean, did your company raise money in the Caribbean, or was it a self-funded business that scaled based on just selling revenue?
So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of a private group of companies that's based here in Bermuda. But that group has entities right across the Caribbean and further afield. So we raise capital internally, but so we're not sort of beholden to any VCs or anything of that nature. So if we're doing a big project or starting a new company, we still have to go through the same process that you were talking about before. But it's to people that we know, and that's not a slam dunk either. So we know, just because we know them and we operate it, a group company doesn't mean they're going to turn around immediately and say yes. So we have to do all the same hard work to make sure that this is a justifiable business to go forward. So we haven't had to raise externally, but we're familiar with the process, and
you had to raise, so.
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned when you talk about the process and being prepared. If you just classic example of Dragon's Den, right? The pitches, the people that win their pitches are short, simple, succinct, and they're prepared for all the questions. And the questions are usually the same, which just always shocks me. Like all the same questions you mentioned there, and then people are struggling for answers. That's that keep it simple principle, right? If you can't explain it in 10 words, then it's too complicated.
It's too complicated. Elevator pitch. Practice your elevator pitch. It's interesting. So what Richard Branson says, right, one of the most famous entrepreneurs, he says, don't practice your elevator pitch. Practice your anywhere pitch. Be able to talk about it anywhere that you meet someone. It could be a cocktail party. You should be able to pitch right there.
I like that. I like that very much.
Yeah. And okay. I would say to people, it comes natural if you're passionate about the business. You cannot help but talk about the problem that you're solving and what you're working on and where at this point. And we need that. People feed on that energy and they start thinking, oh, who can I connect it to? Or you can just point blank ask, I am looking for help with this problem. Do you know somebody in the legal space or finance? Or no, anybody's going to ask me in the Caribbean, hey, David, I want to set up this e-commerce site. I need to get payment options. I was looking at setting up Stripe. Do you have any options or how to do that? And then I would just say, no, you need to go and talk to FAC. You don't need Stripe. Because I know that I can now pass that on. And I think, people love sharing information, but sometimes you have to be willing to ask. And too many people are afraid to ask. And they're afraid to ask because they're afraid of rejection. But you have to think of this. What's the worst that can happen? If you send me a message and ask me a question, the worst that can happen is that I don't answer you, which means that nothing changes. Your life continues. If I do answer the question, though, it could actually change your life. So you may as well ask. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Hey guys, I finally got my internet.
Welcome back.
I'm here, but the discussion seemed like it was flowing. I wasn't needed to be here.
I'm sorry, Paul. We didn't even notice you were gone. I'm kidding.
Oh, great, thanks. Appreciate that. Jeez. All right. This DC versus Marvel behavior. Let's not behave like that. There was a Marvel versus DC conversation early on, guys. It was intense. I think that will have to be another live session altogether. I have some opinions on Zack Snyder's cut. I have some opinions, and not everybody's going to agree with it. So comment below and let us know, where do you fall, Marvel versus DC? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what kind of life you live in.
We're talking about the film universe, guys, not the comic books. We're talking about the film universe. So I expect everybody to fall on the same side, Pauline. Let's just be honest. This is probably 99% of the people agree that the Marvel Universe films are superior to the DC Universe films, except Batman Begins and Dark Knight. But otherwise, we're not really paying attention to the DC.
But we were brought up. Was that?
Wonder Woman was great as well. Not
Yeah.
1984.
But remember, we were also brought up on the cartoons of Batman. I still have that in my mind. Saturday
Batman the
morning
animated
cartoons with
series.
Batman.
Still one of the best cartoons ever. Batman the animated
Yes,
is
yes, agreed.
and yeah, Batman Beyond turned out to be really awesome. But since we're talking about that, we're talking about raising capital, the Caribbean, entrepreneurship, and we end up talking about Marvel DC. Guess what? How come we don't have more people in the Caribbean doing those kind of things? This is intellectual property that can be sold around the world. Life with the creator plus 70 years. We haven't done much of that. But we're also not seeing investors going into those areas. So we need to find a way to change the narrative around the creative arts, the media industries, entertainment, because they can be sold. We can go to Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon Prime. You can sell it online, and then you can create merchandise around that character, around that story, and then you contact FAC, build an e-commerce website, and then people can buy your shirt. We're joking about Captain Caribbean, not Captain America. Let's have some fun with that.
Yeah,
David,
totally.
you don't understand. You just open a can of worms. I believe content is our savior in the sense that forget tourism, forget oil. We need to talk about our stories. The Caribbean story is rich and it's worth selling to Netflix. It's worth selling to Hollywood. But I find that the people who not understand, who know our history, don't connect well with the commercial world. So we have this ancestral way of telling stories because we're telling it to the next Trinidadian, we're telling it to the next Bajan, we're telling it to the next Jamaican, but we're not telling it to a point where we can see that story arc. Do not get me started.
Yeah.
I love that you said, because for me, I sit on the advisory board for Kingston Creative, and they're doing that in Kingston, and they want to then allow that to be replicated in other countries, and that's helping the artisans to learn the business side, and then get the business people to understand that our largest export really is our culture. Our largest export is actually our culture. The money just doesn't come back. Most of the money doesn't come back to us, whether this is soca and calypso, dancehall, reggae music, or even the films that we're doing. So how do we get investors to think differently? In our case, Blue Mahoe typically wants to invest in profitable existing businesses. We have specific industries we wanted to invest in, and I wanted to invest in entertainment. And I'll tell you why. I did my MBA at University of Miami. Right? I finished undergrad at 19, took a year off to play football in Jamaica. Then I did my MBA. So I finished my MBA at the age of 22. But there was one class that the teacher completely changed the way I thought about business. And he said there are three types of business you can invest in. The worst kind of business is a business with perishable goods. So if you don't sell the fruit within the next few days, it's spoiled and you lose all the money. But he counted airline seats and hotel rooms as well. If the plane take off and the seat empty, you can't make money from it. It's gone. If the hotel room has no one after midnight, you can't sell it again. It's gone. So hotel rooms are perishable. That's number one. He said the next best thing to invest in is durable goods. So it might be a car, a computer. Guess what? You didn't sell it today. I can sell it 6 months later at a discount. I can at least recoup some of the money to put it back into a new product. So that's better. But the third one and the best one, he said, was IP, intellectual property. And almost everybody in the class was like, what? Why? And then I pipe up. I was like, yeah, look at Disney. Look at what Disney has built around intellectual property. We talk about DC, we talk about Marvel. Intellectual property lasts for much longer. We talk about music, film, much longer. We need to get our Caribbean investors to understand that intellectual property will actually reap the most rewards over the longest length of time. It's top heavy, so you have to invest up front. We call that capital expenditure, so high capex, but it has a massive long tail. And you think about something like Hello Kitty out of Japan, which my wife is obsessed with, or we want to go and look at Ni Hao Kailan. You can tell I have little kids, right? Paw Patrol, all these things. They're making money off this stuff. Doc McStuffins, come on. Where are our characters or original stories that we are telling ourselves? We're not depending on somebody else to tell it. That's my challenge. So we created the company. Instead of buying one, I couldn't find one to buy. So we brought back Real Vibes. That's the company my brother and I founded in 2002. We started as entrepreneurs, built a technology platform focused on putting Caribbean music videos on the web in 2002. And that's how we started and raised money. But nobody would give us any money for it. They wouldn't invest. They didn't understand video on the web. YouTube didn't come out until 2005. So video on the web, what is that? How you going to make money? Caribbean stuff, oh, not so sure. So we kept saying it was a Caribbean MTV, but we had to shut it down. We've now brought it back as Real Vibes Entertainment, and we hired former film commissioner for Jamaica, Carol Beckford, and we just announced a virtual film festival that we want people to submit, and you never know what can happen from the ones we get. But we want to be leaders in that space to get investors in the region to realize that we need to be investing in our culture, and that content really is king. And the pandemic should have taught us that. We're all stuck at home watching Amazon Prime and Apple TV and Netflix. Let's be honest, that was our comfort food. So let's get more of our stories out there.
Yeah. The worst thing you can see there is, are you still watching?
Oh no! You know what? So there's a running joke in my family. I love that one. So my brother and my wife know when I want to fall asleep and I'm having a long day, I put on Ancient Aliens on Amazon Prime. I think it's 13 seasons on there. Amazon now claims I've watched every episode of every season. I've never lasted more than 10 minutes in an episode. I fall asleep so quickly when I put it on. It's great. It's amazing.
Perfect.
And then it goes on and on, because Chris was talking about earlier about his daughter watching the Marvel universe, right? So then you just carry that on, that legacy, that story goes on from one generation to the next. And that IP conversation is worth exploring. Maybe people need to see the numbers in the Caribbean to understand, because we don't even realize how impacted we are by North American content and how we can flip the script and create our own content.
Internet.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh gosh, sorry, my internet's not been the best. Anyways, so
Don't worry, it just happened to me as well. So don't worry, it's not unique to the Caribbean. We have spikes as well. I don't want people to think that the USA has everything perfect and we don't have our own problems. And that's something I wanted to leave your audience, because we tend to be so focused in the Caribbean and myopic in the sense of thinking America has everything. America has all the VCs, all the technology, all the staff that I need. Actually, they don't have all of it. It's very hard to get to it. We have stuff in the Caribbean, though, that we can use. We have people in different islands that we can use. So you're going to have a payment gateway that comes out of Bermuda. Great. You might have a software developer that's in Jamaica. You might have somebody doing the back end for the business in terms of the finance side in Barbados. I mean, you can leverage the entire region and not think insular.
And I think that's a good way to end this session, because we've been chatting 10 minutes over, but everybody's still on the live session, so clearly it's worth their while. Thank you so much, David, for joining us today. Chris, do you have any last words?
No, I just really sort of amen to what David just said. That's the message that we've been saying so many times over the years. We have all of the tools that we need locally to make this happen.
All right. And I think on that note, guys, we're going to close this up. I hope that this session inspires you to mask up and sanitize, because we want to get through this and we want to go back to whatever normal looks like. Make sure to smash that like button and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook to be notified when we go live on the next live session. Have a good one, guys, and see you on the other side.